Well, thank you, ladies, for having us. We are the Murder Suicide Loss Network. My name is Mitch Marinoff, and we also have Jenna Howe, and we're two of the board members for our organization, the Murder Suicide Loss Network.
Hi, welcome to Room to Grieve podcast. We're your hosts, Karen and Bec. Grab yourself a cuppa, find a comfortable spot, and we'll journey through grief together.
Thanks very much, Mitch and Jenna. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'd like to hear a little bit about your losses, if that's okay with you, and then go into the work about what your organisation does and how you can help other people.
Sure. I guess I want to start with thank you two for what you do. And I think I mentioned when I reached out to you guys that I know our situations are different. However, I firmly believe in my heart that traumatic grief is all similar.
Yes.
You know, your losses are completely different from our losses, and our losses in our group, are also completely different in most cases. You know, so. With that being said, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a lost survivor of a murder-suicide. I lost my mom and my dad back in August of 1990. My dad was the aggressor. He took the life of my mother, and not quite sure, sometime later that night took his own life. And being as that happened in 1990, times were a lot different back then.
Yeah.
And there was no internet. Not to fast forward, but I was called to do a welfare check to find why they weren't answering. And I went over there and I discovered 2 dead bodies. So my journey began. My life changed from that point forward. I had never imagined any such thing. You know, even as I was driving over there, I wasn't technically concerned that something was wrong. It was a family friend saying they couldn't reach them, and that was kind of unusual. But I had no trepidations, nothing. And I even walked, it was the house that I grew up in. I had moved out. I'd been out of the house 10 years. I was 33, actually, at the time when this happened in 1990. And I walked into the house, went into the kitchen like I usually do, raided the refrigerator. It was crazy. And then I started to walk around the house because it was dead silent. It was evening, about 9 o'clock at night. And I opened the bedroom door and saw chaos. So my dad had taken my mom in her sleep, and I thanked that. So she never knew what was coming. And we cannot exactly tell from coroner's reports or whatnot. But at some time later that evening, my dad took himself. Very unusual. My dad, there were no red flags. My dad really didn't drink. There were no drugs. Autopsy reports came back. There was nothing in his system. So I was shocked and completely overwhelmed for many, many years.
Yeah.
So that's the short version of who I am.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't imagine how you felt, and there must have been little or no support at that time.
Well,
and how many years? How did you cope after that?
What we did have was the beginning of local news TV. I'm not quite sure how it is where you guys live. Prior in the 80s and back, we have maybe 5 or 6 main channels to our television, and they started to develop local news, and we had a channel on Long Island, Channel 12 local news. However, there was no internet, there was no anything, and the news teams and reporters and the media swarmed my house later that night. I was actually at that site for about 5 hours because we called 911 myself. I was with my wife, who is no longer my wife at the time. We drove over there together. And I spent about 5 hours in my neighbor's house as the police did their investigation, and 5 hours later was brought down to police headquarters for questioning again, because it seems to be protocol, or more common than not, whoever finds somebody is a suspect. Right. So I became a suspect for several hours. And as you talk about support, where would you go to look? I could have reached out to a phone book, and I don't even know if you guys know what the Yellow Pages are.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's what we had back in the day. I somehow, and I don't remember exactly, I did have an older sister, and I credit her, smart girl. She's an attorney. When I called her and she came, we talked, she was immediately, find support. You need therapy. So I started to reach out, and I went to a suicide support group. It was very uncomfortable because I'm like, all right, my dad committed suicide, but there's way more problems than that. So I think I went once, didn't fit in. Then I found a group for murdered victims. And I went to that, and I was like, wow, all these people are angry about this stranger who may have murdered their loved ones. I know my dad is the perpetrator.
Yeah.
I don't belong here either. So I was lucky enough at about the 2-year point, maybe not even 2 years, 1 year, I met a nice therapist who I ended up seeing for a few years. But as we've learned, when you reach out and find a therapist and say, I'm here because of a murder-suicide, you usually see their jaw drop. They're like, oh, how am I going to deal with this guy?
Yeah.
But my problem was overwhelming anxiety and social anxiety, disability. I just went into an eggshell, and I didn't leave my house for a solid year. I just kind of hold up, and she brought me at least to the point teaching me breathing exercises and learning how to come back into the real world. And it took at least 3-4 years to come back out of what.
Yeah. Because it's like when you say you reached out, you got the Yellow Pages and you tried and you looked, but with all the shock that you're going through as well, on top of everything you've witnessed, your brain isn't working the same. And to be able to have to go and look for your own help is, when you're not functioning and going through all what you've gone through, is very, very difficult. Yeah.
What I found on top of that is there's a stigma or taboo to murder-suicide.
Yeah.
There's stigma and taboo to suicide. I mean, just that word triggers people.
Yeah.
But if you add that word murder to it, it just changes the dynamics completely.
People kind of feel like they are free to have an opinion, I guess, when that's involved. I imagine that, it's, I don't know, I just feel like people love to judge. They love to have an opinion and have assumptions. And I guess you put the words murder and suicide together, and people come to all sorts of opinions. I can only imagine. I can't, I don't think I'll ever be able to understand how that felt for you, but, I know how confusing death felt for me when Bradley died, that for you to have two people you love in a situation that you didn't anticipate, and then be into the throes of media and all the rest of it, I can't imagine how much your head was spinning and that your emotions were just all over the place. Like, where does your brain even start? Like,
You know, Bec, I have been quoted many times, and I thoroughly believe that I lost a decade of my life due to brain fog, the inability to function normal in society. You know, I've learned about the word resilience, and I can tell you a woman like Jenna that's here. Jenna joined our support group very quickly after her loss. I joined the support group. You know, it wasn't formed. It only came to fruition in 2020, and I found them in 2021. And meeting all these people that I've met now, and the resiliency of talking to some people that are weeks, months, and just not even in a year out. Some mirror me. I was a total wreck. I lived on the couch. I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to talk to people. Other people can hide it and go on with their daily life, but you know that they're hiding it. So,
you can only hide from it for so long, can't you?
I was going to say it catches up with you.
It catches up with you.
I'm going to tell you my first therapist I found, her name was Helena Cliphouse, and she was a wonderful, I was 33, so she was close to 50, 60 at the time, older woman. And she put the words in my head that you can't hide and you can't go around grief. So stop trying to do that. Hit it head on and accept it and deal with it that way. Because otherwise, it's going to ruin you for life, because it's going to come back to haunt you somehow.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's with any grief.
Yeah, I think so. So, Jenna, were you part of the founding sort of part of murder, homicide, suicide network, or did you sort of find it just following your own circumstances?
Yeah, I was not a founder. Our founders were two women, Sarah and Brittany. Brittany wrote an essay after losing her father and his wife in a murder-suicide. I just want to clarify, because we get the question a lot, what is murder-suicide? It's a form of suicide where someone takes the life of someone else or someone else's and then their own. For scientific reasons, they use about within 2 days. Anyway, so Sarah and Brittany met each other because Brittany wrote this essay and was published, and Sarah found Brittany through that, and they started this support group in 2020. You know, they never really talked to, I believe, anybody but each other about their situation, and thought we should give people a place to come talk about it. I lost my mother and brother in fall of 2022. And within, I think it was a month, one of my colleagues had Googled support groups, and found Brittany's essay and connected me to Brittany. So I joined the group, and when Brittany and Sarah moved on and sort of, they had Mitch take over, and they entrusted him with this support group, and his goal was to keep support groups coming every other week. And I said to him, hey, I want to make a website so people can find us. And then we thought, let's become a nonprofit. So we did that. And now we have a board of 4 people. Everybody is a survivor. We call that, someone who's lost a loved one or community member in a murder, suicide, or attempt. We have all these different people that come to this safe place to talk to each other.
Oh, that's good. That's so good that you have that. And it's so good that you had a colleague there that was proactive to support you as well, because, so many people in the workplace really don't have that, do they?
No, and she changed my life. I'm not sure she knows that, but she changed my life because she found this group for me.
That's amazing. Do you want to share a bit about your story with your mum and your brother, or is that something that you're not?
Sure. No, Mitch and I agree. Talking about it allows people who've been through it to hear about it.
Yeah.
And it sort of not normalizes, but it gives them, they can hear they're not alone, even though their story's not going to match Mitch's or mine. But yeah, I lost my mother September 30th, 2022. And my brother was the one who murdered her. We're not sure exactly how. But he set her body on fire in the driveway of her house. And then he was apprehended by police that night. 2 days later, he ended up in a prison instead of a mental health institute. He was bipolar 1 with psychosis. He had a lot of delusions, and his world wasn't always my world. So he ended up in a prison where he was able to take his own life. And my story is different than Mitch. Like we said, I found this group. Yeah. It was very helpful.
And I can imagine that, from my perspective, grief is very much every resource I read, every help group I go to, and everything like that. Grief is always really aimed at people who you love, who you miss, but nobody ever talks about the element of what if somebody who's no longer here has caused you some sort of pain. Whereas for you both, I imagine you loved both parties that you lost, but there's also an element that one of them has taken, both of their lives away. So that must really complicate things in how, you deal with loss and how you understand loss, because as much as you love them, there's got to be, I imagine, and I'm making an assumption, but there's got to be some sort of angst towards them too, in that why did you do this? Some frustration there as well. That must really complicate things, and I guess that makes it a lot harder for you, right?
And
would you like to? Our answers are so different.
That's interesting.
And yeah, I think that's the special thing about this group that we've formed, is that everyone's story is different and everyone's feelings about the people they lost are different. And yet we can still come to this place and talk about it and be okay with what. So again, my feelings are different than Mitch. I lived for a long time, scared, angry, of both my mother and my brother. So to me, there were red flags. There were warning signs. I was pretty sure my brother would not be able to survive much longer. I wasn't sure how that was going to happen, but I was preparing for it. And then
How did you prepare for that, Jenna?
I mean, you don't. You do a lot of therapy, and you have a lot of anxiety. But it becomes, I guess the shock of my brother's death was not as shocking as the death of my mother.
Yeah, but you'd been living with your brother's behavior, and it was already affecting your life on a major scale. So when he did go, I hate to say this, did you have some form of relief?
Yes.
That he'd taken some of your fear away of what you was living with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And on top of that, I mean, again, I had been afraid of my mother. I had been angry with her. I don't know why he did this, but and so when she had passed away with him, I didn't have to worry, oh no, how's my mother going to react to my brother being gone?
Yeah.
And the dynamic of that fear got cut off. And I think that's where Mitch and I have a different story, because for me, I was able to move forward.
The fear has gone, but then did you have guilt for having no fear anymore? So
yeah.
you're affected one way or the other, aren't you?
Absolutely.
You can't escape it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. Even talking about, with this on this podcast with you, people who knew my mother will have feelings about it, about my feelings, but they're mine. They're my feelings. It's my story.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, Bec, people like to judge, and that's okay. But Mitch's story is quite different. I think if you want to have a turn, Mitch.
We go back to you, Mitch.
Most of the emotion that I was filled with, and it lasted for a very, very long time to even today, was anger. I was angry that my father would do this and destroy the family.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about, questions of why. That runs through all of us. And it took 20 years to finally accept you won't get an answer to that question. We know in our situation, whether it be murder-suicide or suicide, a lot of debate on, are they the same things? Are they two different animals? But what is definitely accepted is it's all a mental health issue. Nobody without some disorder, mental health reason, is going to take their own life, or especially the life of another and their own life. I will talk about the word forgiveness. If my situation, I always heard you must forgive to heal. And I couldn't. And to this day, I don't really believe I forgive my father for what he did. I'm sad for what he did. However, it took me 25 years to see. One of it was through a TED talk that I watched about forgiveness, that I don't have to forgive him. I just have to forgive myself for being as angry and letting it destroy my life. As I mentioned before, that I felt 10 years were lost. And that to me wasn't fair.
Yeah.
But, to go back to our group, and as you see two of the different stories, Jenna and ours are different. My parents happened at the same time. We do have many members of our community that, the deaths both occurred immediately together the same day. And we have members of the community that the aggressor took his life a couple of days later. Originally, when the group was formed, there was question of what is considered murder-suicide. And if the aggressor does not die at the same time, but days or weeks later, then is it considered murder-suicide, or is it separated as a homicide and a suicide? So one of the things that Jen and I spoke about when we took over as board members was the acceptance and lessening the tolerance of the rules to be in this group.
Mm-hmm.
So, we are open to murder-suicide. There really isn't that much that, if there's a time period between it. And we also, as the group didn't before, accept attempted murder-suicide. Whereas if the victim lived and the other person did die by suicide, the impacted family members where do they go? So we decided let's be inclusive in murder-suicide and attempted murder-suicide.
I tried to have a look before we came on the podcast tonight for some statistics in the UK, just to see sort of...
Just to compare.
It's not something that I'd ever really, looked into, I guess. I mean, who does? Who has a reason to? But there weren't any definitive statistics. But what I noticed was that a lot came up in the research when I was trying to look for it of domestic incidents, domestic related deaths, and it was all really geared towards domestic. And I thought, do you know what? When I think of murder-suicide, that's where my mind wanders to initially, is that it's the domestic related. Why wouldn't it be? And that's kind of... But then it wasn't until I looked at your website, and I think one Google research came back from the University of Birmingham that said in the UK, there is an average of 13 murder-suicides a year related to caring, because the caring community becomes so difficult and seeing the loved one suffer and all of that. And I was like, well, okay, that makes complete sense, I guess, to a degree of, but it has never been something that I'd considered. And then on your website, I read about that it was anybody who had sort of died because somebody else was committing suicide, be it a police officer or a bystander or anything like that. And I think that's where there's obviously some stigma that even I had got in my head around the fact that it's all domestic related, and that's a subconscious thing that I hadn't even realized I was doing. Mm-hmm. So I guess there's a lot of stigma that you guys, sort of have to battle to break down, I guess, as part of the work you do.
What's very interesting is what you just said, Bec. 13 murder-suicides that were recorded in the UK. What fascinates me is the difference of the United States and how we run things as opposed to the rest of the world. Gun laws. We know in England, your police don't even carry guns.
No.
And that to most people is crazy, So in the genre of suicide, in the United States alone, it's estimated that there's 60 to 70,000 suicides. And gun use in suicide is under 50%, about 42, 43%.
Wow.
So a lot of people use pills, a lot of people, there's just many reasons. And this is only reported and recorded that we know about. Many people die and you don't know why or how, and it doesn't get investigated. Now, when you throw in the aspect of murder-suicide, we estimate in recorded documentation in the United States that we have about 750 to 1,000 recorded murder-suicides.
Per year.
A year. Domestic violence, murder-suicide is the leading one. But as we mentioned, there are so many different scenarios. In domestic murder-suicide, domestic violence, 98% is done with a firearm.
Wow.
So we do talk a lot about the
and is it right that it's the male being the perpetrator a lot of the time?
In the majority of the cases, in way majority of the cases, but not all of the cases. But what we classify murder-suicide, also these mass shootings that you see, we consider that murder-suicide in and of itself. You mentioned your murder-suicides in England, most commonly the caregiver. We go to a professor in the United States at the University of South Florida, Florida State. Her name's Dr. Thomas Joyner. He's like our leading authority that is for murder-suicide. And he wrote a book called The Perversion of Virtue. And it's believed that murder-suicides stem from 4 virtues. The caregiver is one of the perversion of mercy, where in your head, you're like, my wife is 80 years old and sick, and I'm sick, and we're all bedridden. And you know what? Our lives would be much easier if we just ended it. And that's a very common one. So you have mercy, you have one for glory, and that would be your mass shootings and your school shooters if they take their own lives at the end. And you have others for almost revenge, where, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a parent, a husband or a wife was cheating or left, and the other spouse said it's not going to happen, went after them and took them. So that it's basically the four main reasons of what would cause this. But the difference in the United States as opposed to the rest of the world boggles my mind. And it boggles my mind that we can't get gun control under control, to put it simple.
Yeah.
What's interesting about the murder-suicide organization, Jenna's loss is not due to a firearm.
No.
And I'm personal about it because firearms was a huge part of my life growing up. I grew up with firearms. I grew up target shooting. My father taught me how to shoot. And, for him to use a firearm, like, was it a shock that my father and my mother died from a firearm? 100% not. It's just that I'm more passionate that I want to go fight people that want to say we should still have assault rifles.
And Jenna's probably got her own passions in like mental health or.
Well, I was going to say mental health is the driver behind it all. Whether you have a gun or you don't, there's plenty of people that have guns that don't kill people with them, right? I mean, mental health is the main driver behind both of your situations. Ultimately, and I guess that's where a better mental health support starts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's kind of
to get back on track of Murder Suicide Loss Network. These are the type of the things that we hope to someday to be able to lobby.
Yeah,
we're small and new still and learning.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Washington, D.C. and to be able to speak. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But we would like to make changes. It's not specifically firearms, to not get carried away. That's the reason. It is mental health.
Yeah.
I just take a stance. Firearms is more prevalent in my life. But, we want to help get curriculums in schools for social workers to understand possibly prevention, red flags of all of these situations. We're trying to get the word out that murder-suicide happens, what it is, and that there's a place to go for help.
Yeah.
Not help, for support. That's the better word.
I think that's really important because, like I said, I did try to do some research before tonight. And when I Googled it, in the UK, there was nothing that came up. Like you said, there was murder support groups. There was plenty of suicide support groups. But there was nothing that catered for, that unique space that you guys find yourself in. And when you look at these things and you realize that there is a need for that. So that's why it's really great that you share this with us so that people at least know that somebody's there. And, we're connecting all over the world tonight. Karen's in Spain. You guys are in the States. I'm in the UK. There is no boundaries anymore in being able to connect with people and find support. We're proof of that just sitting here right now. So I think that's really good that we can help you shine, a light on that you guys are there and the kind of support that you provide. But, if I can ask you, in terms of your grief, like in the aftermath of everything that happened with your mum and your brother, what was it that you really weren't prepared for, like in terms of dealing with it, of you know, what was the thing that kind of struck you the most as being like, God, I wish I knew this?
Of my grief.
Grief or just reaction to everything. But yeah, for me, it's usually my grief. It's usually like, I wish somebody had told me this, or I wish I knew this was going to happen.
You know, I think during the day, I'm able to keep myself pretty busy. Part of being busy is working on this organization. For me, it's the nightmares, and I think that's what I hear from a lot of our group members. At night, your mind can go and can work and can was not prepared.
Yeah. Yes. So you have your distraction techniques during the day, and then at night when you cannot be distracted, it's there and it's coming, it's replaying.
Yeah. That's for me.
And what do you do to sort of help you deal with that? Or is it a case of you just got to let it run its course?
I have, I still do. I do DBT therapy. So dialectical behavior therapy. There are some ways of sort of planning for the next nightmare. Okay. I don't know that I'd say that works. I have found sleeping pills to be the most helpful, unfortunately.
I think everything has its place.
It's like in those quiet moments too, where you're not, you know, if I let my guard down, that's probably going to be when I start thinking about about things that make me sad.
Yeah, but going back to the sleeping tablets, you cannot function if you don't sleep. So you just have to have them sometimes, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm continuing to work on ways, and a lot of talk therapy, I believe, in talk therapy.
Yeah. And I think that's the same for all of us. We all continue. Like Mitch, you were saying that you found the support group, you know, what is it, 20, 30 years later, you know, you're still looking.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something that you ever got over, learned to deal with. You know, like lots of people misconceptionally believe that, you know, it doesn't, you know, you just learn to carry it a little bit differently, I think. And you still continue to find some resilience and things that help support you, don't you, as everything evolves and as you move through it. I think, like, I definitely go through stages where some stages I need a ton of support. And I don't mean stages as in the 5 stages of grief. I just mean stages in my life. Like, there's some parts of my life where I don't function. At the minute, I'm in a relatively stable place and I'm functioning quite well. How long I'm going to be here for, I don't know. I'm well aware that at any given second, my life could fall apart again and I'm not going to be able to cope. But
I think if you acknowledge that though, Bec, if you acknowledge that it could happen, it takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Yes. And I'm learning to accept that unexpected kind of inconvenience of grief is just going to be a part of my life now. For somebody who's meticulous in organizing my life and being a planner and all of that, I am finding it really hard to adjust, but I am accepting that I'll plan to a degree of, if my grief lets me, this is what I plan to do in my life. And if I'm going to fall apart, it's all just going to go to shit. And that's just how it's going to have to be. I guess it's just tough, isn't it? But yeah, there's just things that.
So how many times is it once a fortnight that you all meet up? Is it like over a Zoom meeting?
What's a fortnight?
Fortnight. You don't every 2 weeks?
Once every 2 weeks. Do you not have that word?
You don't use fortnight. Okay.
That blew my mind.
Yeah.
Right now, every other Friday. We have
every other Friday. Okay.
For close to 2 years now.
That's once a fortnight.
So now you can say at the end of you say, right, we'll see you again in a fortnight. Yeah.
Bec, I got to address something that you just said, and you really hit the nail on the head. Universally, the $64 million question, what do you do to cope? What do we do with our grief? What you guys have done to find each other and create this little organization that you guys have. I was asked to write in a book that's been published my coping skills, and I had nothing to write. And this was 25 years later. I'm like, damn, I don't really have the reason or the answer. Let me put it that way. So what I've come to believe is our abilities to come together to speak to each other in our separate genres of loss. You guys losing a child, and cancer in and of itself is just, why can't we cure it? We should be able to, but that's another issue.
It goes right back to your first thing. Why? Yeah.
Why then?
We've all got a why. And
so I am so dedicated or so convinced that the ability to find your people for support, for you guys to talk to each other, for Jen and myself and people that find us to talk.
Yeah.
And whatever comes up. As you said, that grief is always going to be there. When I started doing the Zooms and I started to talk to these people, and I was kind of scared to let them know that your grief's not going away. It's going to change. You're going to learn a new normal, but it's different now. My life changed. My life did a 180 after I walked in and found my parents. Most of us is similar. So the question is, what do you do with that grief? Where do you keep it? Where do you hold it? And of course, probably universally accepted is the more you hurt is only because of the more you loved.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't love that person so much, you wouldn't hurt so much. So these are pretty much the only answers that I have. I don't know, and I wish I had therapists that helped in therapies that are out there. I was never offered any of that. And when I found the ability to speak and not hide what happened to me anymore, holy mackerel, the emotional release was unbelievable. The endorphins.
Freeing,
when I speak with people that I can be comfortable with, it's a whole different world.
Yeah. And we find that too. And I can 100% say that if I had not met Karen, this whole thing for me would be so different. I mean, Karen and I met via text 6 months before the kids died. They died 3 weeks apart. And when the kids died, Karen and I had never met. I'd never met Emily, she'd never met Bradley, and we'd never met in person. We kind of met in person just after Bradley and Emily died, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a week before Emily's funeral.
That was the first time we ever met in person.
And we, because of the 6 months that we'd been through, it was instant. We was like, there was no explanations necessary. There was no talk necessary. We were just in the same room, and it's like we'd arrived, and that was it. We was together, and we've not been, not physically, but mentally, we've not been apart since that very first meeting. And she's not a huggy person and a soft person. I am, and she's getting there now.
It's freeing, isn't it?
Amazing.
To be able to say things like, I feel I can say anything to Karen and not worry about her reaction or her response or the way she's going to interpret what I'm saying, because I know that she's going to understand where it's coming from. Whereas, you know, somebody else that hasn't experienced this might panic at some of the things that I say. Karen's not going to do that. You know, she's going to have an understanding of what I mean. And that's just so liberating. And it's just so much overwhelming grief, isn't there, that you don't need the complication of
it's like a safe space. And I think what you've created in your organisation is a safe space for so many reasons.
And I had an interaction with somebody recently who made the face, I can't do it because of Botox, but like, she's like, oh, how did, something about, why I'm a member of an organization. I explained it to her and she's like, ooh, and it's like, this is why I like my support group, because no one's going to make any face. No one's really probably going to have any real judgment about what we say. Mitch certainly doesn't. I mean, sometimes he does, of course, but like, we can talk to each other about our real feelings about things.
Yeah, Mitch is allowed to, and you are allowed, because once you're in that group, you're allowed to say and do anything, really, aren't you? Because you don't have to explain yourself.
Exactly. I think it's really cool that we can have a room on Zoom with people we've never met, filled with, 5, 10, 15 people. And you can say whatever and people go, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's really, whereas, the general public will not understand that meaning behind it and where it's really coming from.
Yeah.
Or similarly, there's like other parents can say things to me and I think, fuck you, you don't get it, your kid isn't dead. But then Karen can give me exactly the same advice, but I can't say that to her. So I have to go, okay, maybe she's right. Maybe I need to listen to her. And, it makes me stop and listen, and it just doesn't give me that kind of get out clause either, in that sometimes I do need to be told these things. So it kind of works both ways. So totally. In terms of like for listeners who are survivors or part of your community, is there anything that you'd kind of like them to know, like to say to them in terms of, giving them sort of a bit of hope or understanding?
I have a goal to reach as many people. I mentioned years ago that I had a dream of being able to stand up in a forum of people and be a pillar of strength to let these people know that they don't have to feel isolated. The human mind, people are all different. Some people choose to navigate their losses alone. I did navigate alone. It's hard. I find it amazingly therapeutic to talk about our loss. So our quest is to make our search engine better. We are working on that. Just finding your forum, Room to Grief, like I don't think that would have ever come up, as now I play with my phone and search Facebook and whatnot. But when you guys came up, I watched your podcast that happened to come up, and it was with a gentleman who had lost the son, I think.
Was it Larry? Was it Larry Carlett?
Yeah. And I'm like, why are these people coming up on my phone? Why am I being shown this? Maybe it's divine interventions, but that's my quest. I want to have every impacted person from a murder-suicide know that if they need a place to feel safe, that you can spend 90 minutes with us. And we actually even usually give our emails and phone numbers out. I have personally, not a lot, but I let people talk to me. I don't want to become a counselor. It's not what I do. But I have the time and the ability to, if you're troubled, not when a Friday night comes along and you need to speak to somebody, I'd be more than happy to speak.
That's amazing. And you are already doing that. It doesn't need to be a dream. That is reality. And it's brilliant that you are doing that.
It's also, everybody's so different and so unique, like we've said, is that somebody will look at your website, somebody else might join with your Zooms once a fortnight, or some people like to be on the periphery and just watch from afar because they're not ready, or that's not for them to dive right in. And it's been to have, that's where your Facebook, your website comes in. You can read about things, and that's enough for some people. So you're offering so much more than just the Zoom calls.
Yeah. We're hoping to, expand to more.
It's just got to go. We've the thing that we found, myself and Bec, is that we wrote a book within a few months. It's not quite finished yet. We keep going on about it. We wrote a book about the early stages of grief. And then we set up a company like yourself, a not-for-profit company, for all these ideas that we've got. And we want to go into schools. We want to do grief education. We wanted it on the curriculum. That's sorted now. People have been working on that in our country. And we want to do teacher training. And we've done so many ideas that then nothing ends up getting done because we've overwhelmed ourselves. So we can't, it's annoying, but we can only take it at the pace that we can cope with, or else we've got to accept that we can't do everything all at once. We're not going to change the world. We're not going to go to the White House, and we're not going to ban guns. We're not going to this. We can't do all that, can we? We've just got to make a little bit of difference and chip away.
And that's what you are doing.
And you are doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing.
I personally will let you in on a secret. My biggest fear is our group is tiny. And prior to our group, we believe as a whole that there was no peer-to-peer support free in murder-suicide genre anywhere in the world. But it's so fragile. Mainly Jenna and I are the driving force. And I push to grow our board, and we have. Because what's going to happen if we stop? Something that sits in my heart forever. There was a point when this organization almost died. And that's when the original members went their separate ways and asked me to take over. And I was worried that, do I want to do this at this stage of my life? So I immediately, the first person I reached out to was Jenna. And Jenna said to me, please don't let support die. And it's all it took. I'm like, if for nobody else, but for her. Yep. But we need this organization to thrive. And it's such a small niche that it's hard to find those people. Just like you guys, your niche of a child lost to cancer. To have other people get involved in
But I think the difference for us is, and it shouldn't be a difference at all, but I think sadly it is that our niche is easier to find because it's easier for people to talk publicly about a child having cancer than what it is, with the stigma, the judgments, the opinions, and all the rest of it, for what you guys have gone through. And that makes your battle a lot harder in reaching these people, because a lot of people, for whatever reason, because media gets involved, I imagine, with most of your cases, and it all becomes messed up and convoluted, and everybody becomes judge, jury, and executioner, I guess. And And I imagine that makes people retreat, and it's a lot harder, whereas the sympathy is there more for us, which makes it easier for people to be louder. You know?
Yeah.
We could spend hours talking. As you mentioned, media, we didn't even touch that yet. And that's a huge part of what we fight for justice. More than half, and I would say way more than half, of our group have all been affected by the media. I watched back in 1990, every time my local news channel came on, not to be too graphic, but I watched my family members carried out of the house in a body bag. How often the reporters go searching you out. And if they don't find the story correctly, doesn't matter, they'll report a story because they have to. And yes, murder-suicide can be a sensationalized topic. They can lead the story. And we have a murder-suicide in, this neighborhood. And people want to tune into that. But if they don't have some laws to do it empathetically, they don't realize how it hurts the impacted people. And we are working with that too. There's just so much, and there's not enough. It's, they just want their story.
Yeah. They want excitement. They want somebody's tragedy is somebody else's excitement.
Yeah. But I guess that also makes you a main character in that as well. So then people know who you are. There's no, hiding behind that for you either, in terms of, I imagine that locally for you, everybody knows your name.
We have people from every walk of life that I had seen. I come from a hugely populated area. I live on an island of 7.5 million people. We're bigger than many states in the United States. What I hear from the people in small communities, and what you got to remember, there are members of our community where the person that was taken was not, how do you phrase this rightly? Wasn't a family member, might have been a stranger, was definitely some other family that's not tied into your family. So now you become infamous. And you live in a small community and you go shopping and people point the finger at, that's the mother of John Doe who killed that girl. It's just so difficult to deal with.
I can imagine.
As I've stated in the beginning, we almost tend to feel famous. I felt that the world knew who I was, which is not true. But, with media, whether the word famous or infamous, I learned the difference.
Yeah.
I don't want to be infamous. That's for sure.
It's just something else on top of all what you're going through, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very complicated. There's tremendous stigmas.
Yeah.
I do want to mention in our group, but one of my favorite, I don't know that she knows she's my favorite. There was this woman in our group who came because she lost someone who was the victim, if you will, and wanted to understand and have compassion for the person who murdered her. And I just, and you don't need to have any real, you need to be impacted by a murder-suicide, but what does that really mean? I don't know. I just think it was so cool that she could come to this group and listen to what we were saying and have compassion. And she got what I hope she got what she needed, and she hasn't been back in a while. I just really, she thought everyone knew who she was, and she had lost this person in her life. And I just found it to be so amazing when she'd show up to our group.
Yeah, definitely.
And was able to be compassionate with us.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's a nice feeling that you can actually offer somebody that space and that they can do that.
Facilitate that. Yeah.
If it's just one person, you've made a difference, massive difference to that person. Yeah.
Is there anything else today that you would like to share that I haven't asked you, that we haven't covered? Any words of wisdom?
So, I mean, there's so many things we didn't touch on, but we covered a lot of important things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy and proud to be on this podcast with you guys.
Thank you.
We're very grateful for you. Thank you.
I mentioned that what I feel traumatic grief, we're kindred spirits as well. You guys, our losses are completely different, but you don't hurt any differently than we are.
No.
So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for this evening and for talking and sharing so much with us. We really, really appreciate it. And it's been quite a thought-provoking and eye-opening discussion for me, because it's not something that, I really had ever given much thought, rightly or wrongly. So I've learnt quite a bit today, but thank you. And, we're very sorry to both of you for your losses also, and that this shit that we all live every day.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to let us spread our word. It means a great deal.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, because I think it's brilliant. And like you said, if you're only helping one person, it's one person that's getting help. Right? It doesn't need to be masses. We don't need to. The work that you're doing is amazing, and it's enough. And I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, you both. Well, thank you.
So grab yourself a cuppa,
find a comfortable spot,
and we'll journey
through grief together.
Thank you.